Hello and welcome to the Construct Cast. My name is James Darian, and this is a place where we like to build ideas together. So, for today's topic, I initially want to discuss the ideas of the failures of liberalism on a bit of an anecdotal analysis level, but given recent circumstances, I actually want to discuss, and this is related to it, but breaking the narrative. And this is actually possibly going to be a series of podcasts I do all related to liberalism and its failings, at least in the failings of maintenance of liberalism and the beliefs of liberalism. So I wanted to start today by discussing a bit of a loss of control, I suppose you would say, and a bit of a failing in the ability to discuss liberal ideas through a narrative of just, I'm trying to figure out the right word for it, but a world where everyone is framed by the narrative of the media they consume. I guess that's the only way I can really think to put it. So I had a conversation today discussing mask policies with people who I know who all they watch pretty much for news is Fox. So this is a bunch of people who, they're inner city people, but they live on Fox News. That is pretty much their only source of news, if any, and kind of Republican by default, conservative by default, and not even really conservative, I would say. I would say they're more like kind of a bit traditional, but that's beyond the point. When I was talking with them, we were discussing masks because I don't vehemently oppose wearing masks. I will wear them if it seems appropriate, but I generally do not care to wear masks. I don't care to go along with all these guidelines that don't seem to really apply to me or the people within certain areas or certain businesses. Like if I'm in a business that's full of young people, I don't really care to wear a mask because I'm young. All the people there are young. We are not generally at risk. I mean, I have asthma and some pre-existing conditions, so maybe I'm at risk, but it is my choice to not wear a mask and let myself be at risk. That is my own choice, my own free will that I can do that. And when I was discussing it with these two healthy 30-year-olds, they were essentially calling me a right-wing extremist nut for opposing mask mandates. And that when I heard that kind of hit me kind of crazy, because I was like, wait. You guys are supposed to be pretty conservative. You're watching Fox News a lot. I know you're watching Fox News. I know your parents watch Fox News. And you're coming here and saying to me that not being opposed to being forced to wear a mask it makes me bad. It makes me evil and non-caring for other people. I mean, I'm a guy who tries to make a career out of helping people, and that just was the most ironic thing I think I've ever heard, or at least for me personally, it was a very ironic thing for me to hear. So it made me realize that the narrative, at least even on Fox and within cities, within these mainstream outlets, is very pro-mask. I would even say it's somewhat anti-science or very selective about science, because I go to them and I say, okay, well, only 6% of the prescribed deaths from COVID are from people who don't have multiple extra multiple extra pre-existing conditions or other illnesses simultaneously. So these were people who were predisposed to, quite frankly, death, who are at risk here for 94% of the population, and the remaining 6, out of all of them, 90% were not, 90% of them were advanced in age, whatever that means. These are scientific terms, of course, and that was what the source I found said. So, advanced age, I'm just going to say it's probably over 55, maybe it's over 45, maybe it's over 65, I'm not sure. But it's going to be older people, definitely nowhere in our age group. And it was, what's the word for it? It was very befuddling to me, because it made me think that anyone who's just going in to live their everyday lives, anyone who's just listening to mainstream news, no matter what side it's on, COVID is definitely a fear pandemic. It's definitely causing a fear pandemic, and it's making people feel like if you don't do everything that the government mandates, then you are a bad citizen, you want to hurt people, and you do not care about other people's lives whatsoever. I find that to be a fairly despicable thought pattern, and then being told that I am extreme for thinking outside of this closed window narrative, that scares me, because it tells me that this isn't just a framing that has been made, that's being believed. It's kind of a brainwashing. It is propaganda at its finest. It is a societal belief, at least within the circles that these people come from. One is a New York Republican, the other one is a DC Republican, so it's not going to be the most conservative of Republicans. But I think the fact that they are a conservative bunch, or so-called conservative bunch, I think that shows that not only is this very politically divided or politically divisive, but it's very much an urban versus rural conflict, and it shows me that it is a narrative conflict that it gets in people's heads and it convinces them of moral justice and moral propositions. There's one thing that I hate more than anything else, and this is a personal feeling for me, is that I am very much against these moralists where they make themselves just and someone else evil because they said so. That's some way that I have always felt. It's just, I suppose it comes from years of being a devil's advocate in a ton of conversations I've had. But the crazy thing is, I could cite as many sources as I want. I could cite CDC statistics, and their response is, oh, they're just not covering that because they're covering the election. It's like, well, they're still covering the riots. It's like, they're still covering COVID things, so why is this not being brought up? Well, it's just not being brought up because other things are more important. And the self-justification for their so-called thought leaders, you could say, to get away with pretty much whatever they want because those thought leaders decided that something else was more important. That scares me, because that tells me that we are in a society where any thought leader could come up with any idea, and then they can just turn to people and be like, well, that other thing wasn't important. Whenever they get questioned, they can say, oh, that's just not important. And people will go with it. And you do see this on the right and the left. You can see it with the left with police, with any of these police breaking rights or just bad police actions. I was watching a Shoe on Head video earlier where she was showing just all these different police interactions where the police were violating laws, like going and arresting peaceful protesters and legitimately ones. Like I saw guys there were guys on like their knees just talking and getting dragged away. And I mean, you can see all that stuff, but if you really think about it, if police are interacting with, say on average, police interact with 100 million people a year. Well, if even 1% of those interactions are bad, that's going to be 1 million of these types of videos. So when I see that, I'm just like, okay, well, of course you're going to have bad stuff like that. The thing is, like, if you're not having a couple 100,000 or a couple million of those, then it's not really that. I hate to say it, but it's not that big of an issue. Even though you may have 1 million instances where someone's getting hurt by the police, like 99% of the time, it's still working. It's still functioning properly. It's kind of a problem of scale. And then with that scale, you can see that they're focusing so much on where it is an issue. They're not realizing that it's not so much of an issue. It's just that the scale is so large, you're going to have a lot of instances of the problem occurring just from the natural scale. So despite the big issue not really being a big issue, it's overemphasized just because of the size. And you have this on the right, and you can get that now with some of the mask beliefs, at least from some people. On the other end, though, you also have a ton of people who are plain conservatives who are like, I'm not going around with this. But either way, there's a loss of dialogue and a loss of understanding, because the fact that I am adamantly against masks in general, against mandates for masks and such things, to be labeled an extremist for that belief is kind of that is an extreme thought in and of itself. And I find that very ironic. It's very jarring to me. And it makes me wonder, how can we break through this narrative? If I go and show these people alt media, they're just going to write it off as some crazy thing that I watch. If I show them a video that can outright disprove, or I can show them facts that outright disprove this, they can say, oh, well, this isn't important to my media, or oh, this source is bad, or oh, why should I trust them? They're not on TV, they don't have the budget, they don't have this or that to really like dazzle and sparkle and convince me that they are right, and the people I listen to who are so official and making millions of dollars are wrong. So that's a problem with media, I see in a lot of ways. And it makes me question sort of how to discuss these things with people, how to discuss these ideas by and large at scale, and bring them to Americans at large, to get them to sort of reconsider, hey, who am I going to trust? Who am I going to trust with what? And why is just why won't people sort of question themselves? But I guess we reached a point where people don't like to question themselves very much. It seems to be an everyone is always right and everyone gets to voice their opinions all the time type of world, which comes from maybe Twitter a bit and social media in general. To an extent, everyone's able to throw out their opinions willy-nilly left and right. And then they get 1,000 discreditors and 1,000 creditors to back them up or crush them from all over the world. And that can be probably very toxic, but I'm going to wrap this back to liberalism for a bit, because I see one of the great failures of liberalism as being the failure to what's the way to put this? The failure to maintain the values of liberalism throughout generations. Like every generation, the values whittle away a little bit. People pay a little less attention. They're a little less caring about this thing that may have once been vital to their grandparents, but now they take it for granted because they just have it. It's just there in general. This is probably one of the most dangerous things, because like in America today, civics are not very well known. Quite frankly, most people don't know very much about the American founding, about what led the founders to make the laws they made, to make the Constitution the way they made it. My family themselves didn't even know that the Anti-Federalist Papers were a thing. And when I was talking to them about it, they were like, Anti-Federalist? What? Oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. I'm just like, this is what got us the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was from the Anti-Federalist Papers. So we would not have our rights enshrined in law without these papers. But because it was anti-federalist, they immediately thought it was bad and started writing it off before I even got to tell them anything about it. That was truly funny to me to an extent, and also kind of really sad, because it showed me that, well, these are, my family watches the news a lot, or like hours every day, and they're just like, oh, pro-America, we love America, we care about America, and they did not even know that this was a thing, and that's kind of scary. Like, they know about the Articles of Confederation, Declaration, and all, Constitution, and all the basic stuff, but they didn't know about the sort of the pieces that built it. And that made me realize most people probably do not understand the parts that made the whole. Most people do not understand the philosophy behind what created our Bill of Rights, what created our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence. Most people do not understand what is backing all of these ideas and all of these foundations to our society. And without that understanding, at least at a like basic, like, oh, I know the term type of level, at least where you say, I know this is a thing that exists, and this is what's supporting me, or this is what's sort of that this is what's the thing that I should look up if I ever have a question. If people don't know about that, then there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a big problem just in general with getting our ideas across and getting people to understand. Because if we're in a society where people just think black and white, good, bad, and just so uncritically about what they're told is right, that is scary. I mean, I've seen specialists in industries go and say that reporting is being done wrong in their industry, and they see it in all these papers, and then they use these same papers as sources to learn about other things, unquestionably. Tim Pool talks about that all the time. I think it's called the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. I may be misremembering that. It's something amnesia effect, but so my question is, how do we repair liberalism? Because liberalism isn't just left. It's not just the left. It's not just progressivism. Liberalism is just a belief in freedom. It is a classical Enlightenment period ideology that gave the power to the people, and it focused on the individual rights, and it's something that is very foundational to America. So it should be loved by conservatives because this is what America is built on, and it should be loved by liberals and progressives because it's what gives them the ability to make the change they want to make. Liberalism is the very foundation of what creates our society and allows it to evolve and become better and not stagnate and die like the Roman Empire or other past fallen glories or whatever you want to call nations from past. I don't know. Again, I'm stream of thought here, so it's very concerning to me, at least to a modest extent, because on one hand, when I go online and I can find all of these voices that are speaking out in reason, looking for ways to get involved and get active and looking for ways to have open dialogue, and then I see what I would consider just real world interactions of people who aren't necessarily plugged in all the way. They're kind of like sort of on the edges of aware of online activity, but also they give value in very selective areas that will support themselves, support what they already believe in many ways. That it's a wall to get through. And breaking through that narrative it's a tough thing to do. And I'm trying to think of ideas for doing this. And I hope you guys will comment and maybe pass some ideas to me. So things I've been working on are getting sources, using sources that they trust. And the trouble with a lot of these things is I can look up sources, but half the time the sources that they would trust, the non-extreme, quote unquote, air quotes, sources will be written off as something that's like, oh, that's right wing. You don't have any left wing proof. It's like, well, I can't give you a source if it's not being reported on by them. Like, I literally did a search for lives saved by COVID lives saved from lockdown. And all of the results I was getting were more lives lost, more hours of life lost due to COVID lockdowns than saved. And the most mainstream outlet I could find to report on this was The Hill. I was specifically searching for something that was positive about the COVID lockdowns, and I only got negative results. And the most mainstream outlet I found was The Hill. And when I went to present it, I was told, oh, that's just a right-wing source. And that was it. It was given no credit because it was like, oh, that's just a conservative news outlet. It's like, The Hill? It's like, are you sure you know what conservative means? I don't think they realize how broad the spectrum is, but I mean, that's, I guess, beside the point, but it makes things difficult, and that was one idea. I think other ways I can try to break the narrative is I do try to introduce more sources, and I try to get them to at least listen to short parody videos, though if I ever send a parody video that's like making fun of things like the lockdowns or COVID stats. I found one about the CDC, someone pretending to be a CDC employee talking about the new statistics that they put out recently and how they're burying them and how it's already being censored off of social media, the new CDC statistics. Oh, But the CNN article that references them, that's fine. But these statistics themselves, the CDC page, is buried. And I put up that parody video, and they just start laughing. Oh, this is where you get your news, haha. Like, you're not serious. But it's like, I'm trying to find something that you can relate to. Like, you're not taking me seriously, so here's a joke thing. But it's actually using real statistics, and I have actual sources, and I have more, like, content for this. So, trying just over and over to introduce news sources and a broad spectrum of sources, I mean, I'm showing them everything from Shoe on Head for more of the libertarian communist side of things. I guess she's kind of leaning towards that. She's anti-capitalist, so, I mean, I guess she's leaning towards that. And then you've got on the right, I don't go as extreme. I bring up people like Matt Christensen and I guess Dave Rubin, who is, if anything, a centrist. I mean, I've got Ben Shapiro on the right, but again, it's just like, oh, it's Ben Shapiro. He's so controversial. He's so far right. It's like, no, he's not. If you want to see someone who's all right, I'll show you James Halsall. But I'm not doing that. I'm showing you more mainstream right-wing views. You just don't know what mainstream is because you literally only watch one outlet that is specifically tailored for one specific type of right-wing view. But that, I guess that's the thing that grinds my gears. It's just like, there is a rainbow in front of you and all you're seeing is yellow. Or all you're seeing is red. All you're seeing is blue. You're seeing just one color from a whole rainbow. And that just trying to open someone's eyes to see everything that's in front of them is really difficult, especially because when you start trying to do this, a lot of the times, if you push too hard, they'll basically invert it and say, oh, you're in an echo chamber, you're an extremist, or you're this or that. It's just like, no, I'm literally, I've got sources across the full spectrum. I've got sources from as far left to as far right as you can go, and everything in between. And sure, I've got my sweet spot, but I'm still staying alert to everything around me. And the most variance you get is switching to CNN to laugh at the anchors. So, breaking a binary world is very dangerous. It's very difficult, and it can put you in a really tough position. That is a bit of my conclusion from that experience. But I do believe it'll be very rewarding. I believe it's going to be something that's very important and something really, it's definitely something that is essential to society today. It is essential that we break through the narrative. It is essential that we get people thinking and discussing ideas in good faith. And if we can't do that, then liberalism really will be dead. That's a scary thing. The very thought that we could be losing our very foundation, even like when we have conservative people, and I don't mean like conservative people who are very middle of the country, but when you have the conservative people from the cities, and because everything tends to bleed out from the cities, because people get very one way in the cities and they go to other places and they spread their ideas kind of like that. Kind of like, I guess, kind of like a virus. But when you have even the conservative people from the cities being fairly authoritarian, as well as the liberals and leftists becoming more authoritarian, when you have things like the Libertarian Party promoting anti-racism, which is specifically an ideology, a very racist ideology, ironically, about how you must view everything in racial terms. that's you're getting kind of scary there, and it's bleeding out, and there is a chance that the fight could be lost because people don't even realize there is something to fight for. That's the thing that is the thing that scares me, is I believe that we have something good and it's something worth holding on to. And when I discuss with many people, there seems to be a thought that there is nothing to fight for, and that if you're fighting, then that is a sign that you just have lost all of your sense. And if you look at things like Jonathan Haidt's 5 Moral Foundations, I believe this does relate to conservative people's natural tendency to appeal to authority. This is going a bit beyond the scope of our main topic, but there is that appeal to authority that is common among conservatives, and you can see it very much in religious groups a lot of the time, and you can see that it does make sense that there's the appeal to the higher power, there's an appeal to just people who are in charge, people who are authoritative and can sort of be your guiding light. That I think is a good way to phrase it. There is a reverence for guiding light figures. So the question is, how do we make people realize that there are more stars in the sky than just one? Anyhow, that has been this episode of the Construct Cast. I do hope that you all will discuss this topic below, because I think it's something that we all want to do. We all are here on Locals wanting to have conversations. We are all here wanting to not just break through the narrative, but figure out what is out there and figure out just what is going on with the world. We want something more. That is how I see things here. And I thank you for joining me on this. And I really think that this discussion, this is going to be one of the most important ones for all of us to work together to really figure things out and make a better tomorrow. Figure out a way to make a better tomorrow. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing here. And hopefully this will be part of that difference. This will be part of that change. Anyhow, it's been a pleasure speaking with you all today. I'm James Darian, and I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.